Hello, everyone. This is BigReed with another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories. This is episode 28, and today we will be discussing Super Mario Sunshine for the Nintendo Gamecube. I know that sounds all formal and boring, but I was actually kind of excited to hop into this one. Even though I feel like every time I sit down and discuss a game, I'm like, oh, this one's going to be unique. But this one was really fun. So it's a kind of like a retrospective. So recently, I went back and replayed Super Mario Sunshine. Nintendo in 2020 released a 3D All Stars Mario collection with a limited print. By the way, it's an extremely popular title that people want to buy, but I think you can either download it or I don't know. They Nintendo, when they came out, they said we're only going to manufacture so many physical copies. I don't know why, and then that was true. But I downloaded it, and that compilation comes with Super Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, and then Mario Galaxy on the Wii. Three phenomenal 3D Mario games. But there's just an allure to the GameCube era, and I think partially it's because up until the announcement of the Switch 2, it's been very difficult to replay GameCube games. So I talked about this a little bit before, but the best way to play the GameCube right now is probably emulators, which is kind of funny. It's not funny because it's hard for fans of that era. But there was a lot of titles on the GameCube that are, first party wise, just really solid. Super Mario Sunshine included, but also weird third party games that they got. They got all the Resident Evil 3D, remakes, which are awesome. Phantasy Star Online, one of mine I'll probably do if I can, get back and play that again. I'll probably do another podcast on that one. But yeah, it's just really funny because I download the collection and you have to jump into a game, right? And the first one I gravitate towards is Super Mario Sunshine because honestly, I haven't played it since the GameCube back in the day, sitting in front of a little box TV. But it had a lot of unique elements, and I was very curious with some of these retrospectives I've been doing. So I've been, past few months going back and playing some old games just to see if my memories match objectivity to a certain degree, right? So I want to see if like everything still is the same. My feelings for the games, are the same. And largely Super Mario Sunshine is that as well. Now Pokemon Red and Blue I loved. I was still like, yep, these are amazing. Replayed Majora's Mask, which I'll do a podcast on that as well. But Super Mario Sunshine's kind of interesting because I I like Mario. It is a phenomenal game, and the gameplay is perfect. It's an action that is so. The gameplay is like core video game industry. It's like how like a baby just knows how to do certain things, or you see an animal born and a horse is born. This is such a weird analogy, I'm so sorry, but a horse is born, it falls out, and it stands up within like 10 minutes. Like it just knows what it's supposed to do. And it's funny, running and jumping, Mario's core gameplay is like that. It's just everybody knows it, everybody understands it. But at some point, not all video games are like that. So Shiggy kind of had to sit down and be like, okay, you run to the left or the right and you jump. And then, as they came out with Mario, jump on a Goomba. Like, it's just understood. So to keep Mario fresh, you have your 2D Marios, which were phenomenal. And then it obviously has to go into 3D. So Nintendo has to constantly innovate and change things and have different ideas because you couldn't just make the same Mario game over and over. Now, I might I might push against that a little bit because the games are so good that I feel like you probably could have had, Mario 64 2, Mario 64 3, but you do need to incorporate different ideas, into it. And Super Mario Sunshine is probably one of the greatest examples of that. It's done a little bit later, with Super Mario Odyssey. So your hat, you got a little ghost in a hat, and you can jump on your hat and do different things with your hat that allows for more innovative gameplay on top of the running and jumping, which is still there. But Super Mario Sunshine had Flood, so Fludd, which it's the same professor in the video game Luigi's Mansion. So he made the Poltergeist 3000, the vacuum that sucks up the ghost. Well, for some reason, I believe he also made Flood. So in the canon story, I believe he created both of those. But for some reason, during this era, Nintendo with Mario and Zelda, that's where like all the core developers were, because Metroid went to technically a second party. They were obsessed with water, and you got two really interesting experiences with Super Mario Sunshine and Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. But if you look back now, it's really funny because like they're, I don't want to say cult classics, but they're definitely like fan favorites, even though Super Mario Sunshine is infuriating in the same spot. But you have Flood, and he's a little water backpack jetpack, and you land on Delfino Isle or Island or whatever. Looks like a little dolphin, and your plane lands. There's all this goop or whatever. Mario's supposed to go on a vacation with Peach, or he's just there. I don't know. The plot is going to be hilarious when we talk about it. This era was just so funny. It has voice acting, so it's just such a unique, just setup. And coming from Mario 64. Nintendo kind of showed that even with a janky camera, that Mario can transition into 3D, and it was a really great showcase for the hardware. And Nintendo, I think it was in 2000, started showcasing the GameCube hardware. So you got, early Metroid Prime, you got that Legend of Zelda, Link versus Ganon little gameplay element to kind of showcase the hardware. But you also got Mario 128, which was the tentative title for what, the GameCube Mario would become. But what was cool about it is it showed, hey, you can have 128 Marios on the screen, all doing different things all at once. And it was a pretty big jump up. I would say after Gen 7, the increase in hardware was led to games that were definitely more beautiful, but I'm really trying to think off the top of my head. It didn't really lead to different gameplay elements. So I really think it's important to specify the 64 era, where they have to redesign video games completely from the foundation up. And like, can we transition this into a 3D space? Because this is very clearly the future. But from the GameCube on, there was, in my opinion, less innovation to the gameplay because of the graphics, where there's no getting around when you have 2D graphics going into 3D. You know what I mean? Like it's just a complete change. Every game is developed differently. So going from the Nintendo 64 with Mario 64, Nintendo kind of had to, this is how they felt, but they had to kind of innovate Mario, because it's like, okay, we already did 3D. Now, part of that innovation, I think it would have been better if they would have put more focus on the camera, meaning the camera from 64 to Sunshine is not that much better. You definitely fight the camera, and they kind of give you free reign. They have the little, guy on the cloud floating around with you in 64 saying, "Hey, look, I'm gonna video record you. You can press these buttons, but it's always going to the back of you." So that was pretty interesting, but they gave you a little bit more control with the 3D camera and kind of moving it around and viewing Mario. But I feel like that led to different frustrations. So let's kind of dive into it here. So Super Mario Sunshine, you got the Flood backpack, you got the traditional Mario gameplay, but it's all 3D. You're running, you're jumping. There's collectibles. There's blue coin collectibles. Yoshi's in it, which we're going to talk about a little bit. And then you have the mechanic of water. Now, for those that remember the Water Temple in Ocarina of Time, you probably are a little hesitant to hear water-based gameplay. And for me, like up until Super Mario Sunshine, water was scary. You had the Ocarina of Time temple, and then you had the Majora's Mask temple, and I'm just like, man, like I don't like being in water. Like it's dangerous. It's hard to see. I remember Majora's Mask scaring the crap out of me. But there wasn't a lot of happiness associated with that because I remember getting stuck on the water temple for like a year and then coming back to Ocarina of Time and just like randomly beating it one time. I was like, oh, the silver keys at the bottom under this. So, long story short, going into Super Mario Sunshine, it was a little scary because it's like, okay, well, what are they going to do with water? Is water good? Is water bad? Because, previously in video games, like, water was scary to be in, even in like Super Mario Brothers. You're swimming, and if those little the squid guys get you, you're done for. But I think they did a really good job of the overall theme and kind of the anesthetic of Super Mario Sunshine. I know some people might not like it, but I actually enjoyed the main music. The Delfina Plaza music is incredible. And that's like your hub world, so that leads to like the 7 or 8 different worlds that are out there, and then there's shine sprites and everything that are in the overworld. There's different attachments for Flood. Mario is in the sun. It is sad. I know he gets an update where he gets a Hawaiian shirt, but it is kind of sad seeing Mario in jean overalls when it's like super sunny, sandy, and beachy. But the water graphics look great. The music's great. There's it's just like that island vibe. I really enjoyed the anesthetic of coming back to all of it and jumping into it. The graphics are bright, everything's sunny. You're just like, oh, this is really cool. And basically, what's happening is there's some, evil looking Shadow Mario who is painting goop on everything, and they're like, oh, so they're gonna put Mario on trial. So he lands for vacation, and they're like, you're the one who did this. So obviously Mario is the hero that he is. He just starts kind of helping the island out. So a lot of times you're cleaning like paint and gunk off of stuff. That's how a lot of like the boss fights will be around. So using water to clean is a really simple mechanic. It's kind of like the opposite of Luigi's Mansion. So it's really funny. It's like, you are sucking up the ghost and sucking up everything in it, and Luigi's Mansion 3, there's a whole sand level where you can vacuum up literally all of the sand and it's just, that's pleasing. And it works the opposite way as well, where you kind of like shoot water at something, or you shoot water at an enemy, or you run around, you shoot water, and the island locals are like, oh, what are you doing? So that is just like fun in and of itself. For a game that I feel is good, and I went back and checked the reviews because I remember Super Mario Sunshine being successful at the time. And really, listen, this is what Nintendo needed. They sold like 19 million GameCubes, and Super Mario Sunshine sold 5 million copies. So it has almost like a 25% attach rate, which is just bonkers. It's hard to kind of equate that now. And I think they've done that with like, Mario Kart 8, where basically like 1 out of every 2 Switch owners has that. But that's a really phenomenal attach rate for how low the base was. And it's different when you hear a game sell 1 million copies, now, when they have 100+ million Switches out there. And the video game industry is just so much larger than it was. Not only in terms of just the amount of people playing, like everybody plays video games to some capacity, whether it's on their phone, like everybody knows what a video game is. In this time, video games were still becoming popular, so there was still a lot of, media kickback and arguing. Grand Theft Auto, this is at the time of, 3D Grand Theft Autos and everything as well. So it's like you have Super Mario Sunshine where it's all sunshiny and happy, and everybody's like, yay, let's ride Yoshi, this is fun. And then you also have, Grand Theft Auto running people over with cars around the same time. So the media has been, the media is focusing more on social media now, where video games were, seen as demonic for a while. Parents weren't quite understanding it, and they were getting lumped in with everything when it's like, no, hey, I'm playing Mario, and it's like, oh, you're killing people, you're doing this. So it is interesting to see, with selling under 20 million GameCubes, how many people bought Super Mario Sunshine. It was basically just hardcore Nintendo fans during that time. And listen, if you have 20 million hardcore fans of anything, I mean, you're you have a base there, and you have a lot of potential. But they brought a lot of difference, and innovation with Super Mario Sunshine. But is that a good thing? So I love the anesthetic. running around as Mario, sliding around on the ground, shooting water out. That's all fun, using the jet boosters, the skyrocketing attachments. There's different attachments for Flood. So there's one that actually like rockets you like 40 feet into the air. All of that is fun. So just playing around with Mario. If you're in Delfino Plaza, you start running around, you start shooting water and jumping and sliding and listening to the music. You're like, this is cool. But now there needs to be a structured Mario game built into this, right? And that's where the difficulty, the frustration, the camera, the like what were they thinking elements come into it. And this is a game, like I mentioned, I checked the reviews, like goodness gracious, it's extremely high rated. Like it is critically acclaimed. And it's funny looking back on it now because it's like there's people that just like hate Super Mario Sunshine. And difficulty is good. And I'm very happy with what, you know, the Soulsborne series was able to show that difficulty can be completely fine and it can also, reach a large group of people and that can be part of the gameplay, but it has to be fair. Things can't be difficult because they're unfair. That's when the fun goes out the window and you're pulling your hair out. And it was really interesting going back and playing some of these levels. So for those who haven't played like the early 3D Mario games, you're collecting 120 stars or shines, whatever you want to call them. So it's essentially like you're beating 120 levels or 120 like tasks. So if you're in the overworld and you find a different attachment and you're able to like reach a shine that you couldn't reach before, it's something like that if it's in the overworld. Or you go into a level. So you're in the overworld, you go into one of like the actual worlds, similar to the paintings actually. Like you spray a little M that was left by Shadow Mario, and it sucks you into a world, and there's 8 shines to get. To get to the final boss, you need to beat all of the world's 7th shine. So complete it. You don't have to do the 8th one, but you have to do the 7th shine, and that allows you to progress the story, which is hilarious, and we'll talk about in a second too. But this is where some of the frustration comes in. So it's like you take these fun mechanics. It's enjoyable. So you're running around Delfino Plaza. I like it. It's sunny. It's beautiful. I think that graphical style during Super Mario Sunshine and Wind Waker held up. And there was a lot of 3D games in the generation 7 and 8 of the video game industry, that don't stand out because everything was gray, everything was brown. So it stands out. It's fun. Like the controls are crisp. It's good. But then you have to go into these, these shine sprites, and some of them, like you'll do like 2 or 3 in a row and you're like, okay, that was enjoyable. But then you'll be doing things that you're collecting it and accomplishing it and getting to the end is enjoyable. And the overall experience is enjoyable. But as you're getting there, you're like slogging through some mud. So I'll give a few examples of some of them. So one of the examples is riding the little squid guy. So you ride him like a jet ski almost, and Mario's shooting across the water like 10 times faster than he can run. And, it's like collect 8 red coins. Okay. Here's where the gameplay and the game mechanics start getting a little bit weird. So if you accidentally bump anything, Mario falls in the water, dies, and you're sucked out of the overworld, or you're sucked out of the level and thrown back into the overworld. No second chances. It doesn't start you back where you jump on the squid. And this is like the first Mario game. Listen, I'm old. This is the first Mario game where I've been getting like game over screens like since the NES. And I'm like, holy crap, I got like 7 game over screens on this one. Because Mario only has like, you start with 2 lives and I'm just getting, I bump into a boat and it's like, you're dead. And this is where I mentioned that fear of water being bad in video games came true. It's like, okay, well, you fall in the water, you're dead. Okay, cool. Same world. So you're riding the squid guy, you bump it. So basically, I had to redo this like 10 times, get all the gold coins, you get back to, where you're supposed to be. You don't fall in the water, you die. But it's like, I feel like if you're testing this, you need to test the game. And you need to test the game with people who are not designing the game. So even if they're, producing or, you have your game testing, you got to give them the game, as you're building these sections or building these ideas. Now, I'm not saying, complete the develop the entire game and then give it to a team to test for 3 months. I mean, that's probably not a bad idea as well. But, okay, you develop a gameplay mechanic or you develop a shine level, for example, and you're like, okay, hey, like play through what we've developed so far and like tell us what's good and bad. Because I feel like you would have gotten so much criticism that just like was not ever addressed, and then the game was released. Now, I did hear, I don't know how much truth there is to this. I don't know how granular Nintendo got into it. I know Shiggy, which I'll quote here in a second, has spoken about the difficulty of Super Mario Sunshine because he wants, and for good reason, he wants the games to be accessible, and they, this game is accessible. Don't get me wrong, but there are certain things that make the game not fun to play. And I still completed it. I didn't get all 120 shines. It was one of those where I was like, okay, I beat Bowser, and I'm like, I, I've had my share. But Yoshi's another great example, right? So Yoshi is rideable for the first time in this game. And of course, with the Delfino Plaza music, you get like a little bass drum when you're riding Yoshi. It's just a nice little Nintendo touch where it's fun. So instead of spraying water, Yoshi eats fruit and he has like a juice meter, so he sprays juice on stuff, and that can be helpful for like certain enemies. If you spray them, they turn into a platform. Now, current Mario games, even when you're 3D platforming, I'm gonna try to like give this as the best example on certain 3D platforming elements in this game as I'm like going up, because it's Mario seems like slippery or janky. Like falling is way too common, and if you miss anything, I feel like you're just like bouncing around and falling all the time. And I don't feel that way in the new Mario games. Like they he feels slippery in Super Mario Sunshine is the only way I can kind of describe it. And like it feels like you don't have good control of him. So this was the first time where if you know the feeling you get when you climb a ladder or you're really high up and like you look over a ledge and you get that like sinking, falling feeling in your stomach, I got that while playing Super Mario Sunshine several times. And I've jumped out of airplanes. Like I would probably say I'm afraid of heights like most people, but I've jumped out of airplanes. Like I have experience being really high up. And this game gave me that nauseated feeling several times while I'm like really high up on something, because I'm like, if I slip and fall, like I'm falling and going to have to redo a ridiculous amount of climbing. And that part, didn't feel fair. Going back to Yoshi, there's another element in the same level I was referencing, and you need to get Yoshi. Okay. But to get the Yoshi egg there, you can go to that level without having unlocked Yoshi. So what you actually have to do is go back in the overworld, and I forget, there's like something you need to do that like unlocks Yoshi, or you find a Yoshi egg. Like you have to go and get him first. So I feel like that is just an oversight. Like maybe they didn't check to see like, hey, our players, is it possible to go into this Yoshi level and you can't even get Yoshi? Like the egg's not there, and nothing tells you that the egg isn't in the level. I had to look it up. I was like, why is Yoshi not here? Like it lets you enter the level without unlocking Yoshi, who is required to beat the level. So it's just a weird design oversight, because it's like at that point they just forgot to check to make sure the player, like it should have been blocked. Like you couldn't even go into it. So I had to go back out, do something, find Yoshi, unlock him, and then when you go in that level, his egg is there. So that was already the first thing. It was already very confusing and kind of like jarring, because you don't see that in first party Nintendo games generally. Like an oversight where they just forgot to check to make sure that you can even enter and play the level. Like that shine level was not playable at that moment, which is really funny, because like I said, that doesn't happen in first party Nintendo games too often. So I go back in, you get Yoshi. Well, hold on. Yoshi needs a specific fruit. There's like 6 or 7 fruits in the game you can find around like the levels and everything, but he wants a very specific one. Okay, well, 50 feet away from the Yoshi egg, there are these 2 water tower looking things, and you can, ground pound one of them and it'll shoot out a random fruit. And then you have to go to the other one, which is like, 10 feet away from it. So you can already fall in the water and have to climb all the way back up and take like 5 minutes to get around. So that's already silly. So you have to ground pound both of them, running back and forth, ground pound until you get the right fruit. Well, guess what? The fruit is also covered in Vaseline for some reason. It just flies off and falls in the water. So it's like, why did they, like, why? So finally, after like 15 minutes of ground pounding fruit back and forth, I finally get the one I need that didn't fall into the water, physically pick it up, and then like run over to the Yoshi egg. You get the Yoshi egg. Cool. This is all the same shine, by the way. So there's already like two things in this shine level, like preventing me from playing the game and enjoying myself. I remember I was, like in bed playing this, just like getting frustrated. Like, what is happening here? Then you get Yoshi. Okay. So we talked about waters. Water good or bad? Well, in a game solely based on water, water just instantly kills you sometimes, like we mentioned earlier. Yoshi hates water. You fall in water with Yoshi, he just dissolves and goes away. So you're like, okay. So there's literally a 0% error rate at all. Like if you slip off or the camera gets, weird and Yoshi touches water, he's absolutely done for. And then you have to literally go all the way back to the beginning, get that fruit again. Meanwhile, it takes like 5 minutes to get back up where you need to be. So this was already kind of like a unique experience. But okay, so we have these like, red fish or dolphins or whatever flying out. You squirt them with Yoshi juice. Oh my, Nintendo. You squirt them with Yoshi juice and they turn into a platform and, slowly just use the little Yoshi flutter and you're going a pretty good distance. And then there's some metal platforms which are really thin, And what's interesting about this too, this is one thing to note, because I haven't seen these controls in a while, and I don't know how familiar with tank controls everybody is. But that term became popular mainly with Resident Evil, where basically what it means is if you are pressing up on the D-pad, your character moves forward. Generally speaking, regardless of the orientation they're on. So if you're on a screen, probably what you're used to in the modern age is whatever direction you push the analog stick is where your character runs. Well, with tank controls, your character goes into like different screens. The screens are generally static. That's how it was in Resident Evil. So like you'd go into a screen, you're in a new room, and the camera's static. It's not moving. And if you're pressing up on the D-pad, your character moves forward regardless of the direction they're facing. So it takes some time getting used to. They're not good controls. They're manageable, but I would not describe them as good controls. They're a product of their time. I think everything kind of works, better now. But there's some like legacy tank controls that I found playing Mario Sunshine, which I did not recall at the time. But basically, what'll happen is if the camera's changing, if Mario bounces off a platform, something like that. I just noticed them a few times. Whatever direction you were putting at the time that Mario hit that platform or fluttered with Yoshi, he will continue going into that direction unless you let go of the analog stick and kind of reset it and then press the direction that you want to go. So it's only certain times, but that was definitely a byproduct of that era as we were kind of coming out, that early 2000s, late 90s, early 2000s, maybe even mid 90s, but around that era, that 7-year period where you would have some of those controls. It's almost like Mario feels stuck. But I was like, these are just tank controls. But it only happens sometimes, and it's if you bounce off a mushroom that rockets you up, Mario will continue going in the direction and will not be able to stop doing that, regardless of what you're pushing, unless you let go of the analog stick and then regain control of him. So that happens with Yoshi in this section, and you're literally just trying to platform. Yoshi flutters too far, doesn't flutter far enough, because the camera doesn't really give you... The depth is hard to determine in this game. Once again, probably just a product of its time, but what could be controlled was, okay, is Yoshi unlocked? Why is the fruit covered in Vaseline and flying everywhere, and it's just a big pain in the butt to get? And then Yoshi touches water and dies instantly, and you're just out 10 or 15 minutes as you basically try to get back around to this. So to beat this level, I can't tell you countless times on that shine in particular, it just died. And I feel like if you're creating a core gameplay theme, so the gameplay theme is like, okay, what if Mario had a water jetpack? And, you know, most of the levels are going to be based with water. So water is supposed to represent like purity, clarity, cleanliness, good, right? And the weird paint, you know, is it's dirty, it hurts you, it messes with everything, nobody likes it. So it's like you kind of have your light and dark elements here. So your water should be something that you want to be in, that you enjoy, that you like. It shouldn't be like, oh, Mario fell in water, now this is going to be miserable. Oh, Yoshi's dead. So I think if they would have tested a couple of those levels that we mentioned so far, they might have been like, okay, there's something's broken here. Like the platforming, the climbing, it's everything's slippery. You're falling. Like, is this fun? I'm trying to think of a couple other levels. There's that level. It's like Pochinko or something like that. I could be saying that wrong. But it's where, okay, so Mario goes into this big video game looking thing and it shoots him up. It's like pinball. Shoots him up, and there's red coins in various parts of, you know, the left. So you want to shoot yourself to the left, to the upper middle, but basically like you're aiming Mario and you're collecting these red coins. Now, could have been fun, but I know there's absolutely no way that Nintendo replayed that level. I can't fathom it, because even on this playthrough, I took a little video clip of like 9 seconds of Mario is just like stuck on something, and he's going like he's jumping like 100 times in a row per second, and he's just stuck, and I'm not even pressing any buttons. I'm not doing anything. I'm like, oh, it's just broken. Like if you, and I got stuck there like 100 times during that level. I think I skipped that one. If that one was skippable, I believe I skipped it, because I'm just like, it's not playable. Like he's stuck. The funniest level. So I gotta give some shout outs too, because there's a level that you go into that I believe is covered in lava at one point. So I actually liked the world. If I'm remembering correctly, it's the level with the chain chomps. And I liked the world, but it had some of the most frustrating shines on it. So the first thing we'll bring up is the action button. For some reason, changes when you're climbing metal grates, depending on if you're climbing them versus you're hanging from them. So if they are above you and you're hanging from them, they have these like little kind of doorways. So if you punch it, it flips you back in. So you're inside of the grate, and then you can, you know, ground pound it and you go outside of the grate so you can climb around. So I would generally like that, but you can play it for 5 seconds. Like if you just gave it to any test group, or, you know, a lot of times I think Steve Jobs was, this might be a Steve Jobs quote, or it's just one of the millions of quotes or ideas associated with him, you know, after his death. But basically the idea is you take a piece of software, or, you know, you're working with an app, or like, you know, technology these days, you hand it to a kid. And whatever they do is they're going to do the path of least resistance. Now, I think you can kind of hand it to anybody now. If they go to like click something on the screen and it doesn't do what they're trying to do, it's like, well, why doesn't it? Because that's what is natural. That's what makes sense. And that's the path of least resistance. And like the button being different, and here's why I'll lead into this as well. The button being different is immensely frustrating, because if you press the action button that you would when you're climbing normally, when you're hanging, Mario just falls to his death immediately, and you have to redo the whole thing over again. So testing that, because I didn't look it up, testing that led to many Mario deaths, as I just pressed the different buttons to figure out what is the button I need to press when I'm hanging versus what the button I need to press when I'm on these stupid middle grades climbing. So it's things like that. Like, okay, so there's all this lava on this level, and you have to go the specific route underneath the level. Great concept. I love it. I want to play it. And then I go to climb, you know, halfway through, I press a button and Mario just goes, "Wah!" Falls to his death here. And I'm like, cool. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we're dying and going right back to the beginning, or we're getting kicked out of the overworld, going back into the world, going back all the way there, and then pressing a different button. Oh my God, I fell to my death again. And like I said earlier, I heard that the game had a pretty severe crunch time, and I think a lot of this was due to the GameCube was not doing well. And when you're dealing with business pressures of that, and you have to increase the speed in which a game is developed, that causes an issue. And there's a reason why Nintendo has like several development teams all working on different, and the games might take a while. And that's a topic for another time. I think games, like, I think we can get back to, a year development time, if you have everything kind of, in a row. But when it's crunch time, and that is probably the best way I could use to describe it, because there's no way certain elements of this game were played and checked upon. Like, I think they were checked upon in terms of a functionality standpoint, but I just can't imagine that something as small as that, or water killing Yoshi instantly, or just Mario falling to his death, and it's just like not fun or fair by pressing a wrong button that was the right button, 5 seconds ago. So it's hard to believe that it went through like a quality control. And what's even more fascinating is this game, it's still a good game. I enjoyed playing it. I would say, yes, this is a game that everybody should try. But the difficulty is not in fairness. It's in frustrating gameplay elements that I feel like if they were tested not by the people developing that level, somebody would have been like, hey, this kind of sucks. This is not fun. And you're like, oh, yeah. Let's fix that, because honestly, just a couple fixes or a couple small tweaks and boom, it wouldn't even increase development time. It's just like, oh, that's fixed. One of the other elements was the level. Oh my gosh, I was dying. So I did look this level up because I was like, there has to be something, and it's like well known. So there's special levels, and there's a handful of them, so probably like 8 to 10. I can't remember. Where I'm kind of curious as to why they did this too. So the whole game is designed with Mario having FLUDD, so you get used to him, and then you go to a special level, and Shadow Mario just takes FLUDD away from you, and it's just Mario. Mario just feels slippery in this game for some reason. And it's normally of like, okay, you start here, there's a bunch of moving blocks, they're playing like a really cool Mario, like doo 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 ba, and it's like all skibbity beep bop. It's like, it's really cool. It's like acapella. So the music's great, the vibes are great. You go into this, you love it, and it's just so it's a disaster most of the time. Like you are going through like different moving blocks, obstacles, sand. So like you jump on a sand platform and it just dissolves like pretty much instantly. And if you don't jump as soon as you touch it, Mario falls to his death because he goes to like grab and fall. It's just the whole thing. But you die, you have to start the level over. Okay, well you have 2 deaths, and they're hard. They're hard levels. Like it goes from like a difficulty of like, the average game's difficulty is not that difficult, and then there's just like spikes in difficulty where it's so frustrating. Then you get a game over, then you have to go all the way back in. But the worst out of all the classic levels by far was the level with the chucksters, so the island people that like throw you around. So in this section without FLUDD, you have to rely on these guys to platform by going up to them, and when you talk to them, they throw you. And they throw the crap out of you. Like they just chuck Mario. And one of the YouTube comments, because I looked this up because I was like, there's something that I'm missing. Like you can very clearly dictate where these guys throw you, but I don't know how or why. Like sometimes they just throw me somewhat towards the direction of where I need to, or they chuck me 10 miles in the wrong direction and Mario just dies. And one of the comments was just cracking me up. It's like, imagine getting to heaven and God says, I'm a chuckster, because that's what they say to you. Like, I'm a chuckster, and they just like grab you and immediately throw you. But that level, like, that level was the level that made me decide that I'm just going to get to the final boss fight, beat it, and be done with it. And it's another level where I'm like, I believe the developers who were creating that level tested the level because it's functional. but I don't believe they gave it to somebody who did not design that level with all the information of like, just here's kind of what you're looking to do, right? There's no way anyone like cross-references or tested it before it got put out. It almost feels like half the shines are kind of like they're fun, they're solid, and the other half, well, nah, probably like 30% of them are just infuriating, and they just like whip them together, and they're like, okay, this is functional, it's functional, like okay, you can beat the level, okay, good, just put it out there. Because you go up to these guys, and you'll notice that as they're looking at Mario, their head's like on a swivel, so you want to kind of like center their head before you talk to them, which is already really hard because like the control of Mario and getting these guys to like face the right direction to talk to you was not ideal. And then they literally just throw you to the next platform. And like I said, if they miss, it's instant one over, or instant game over. The reason I said one over is on the first platform, if you face the opposite direction of the first Chuckster, there is a green one-up mushroom, and you can utilize that to get a one-up. I had to do that on this level because I'm like, I died probably like 50 times. But then you kind of figure it out. You get used to it. You get through like 4 of the Chucksters. Then you get to the final one, and he's walking in a rectangle, but facing the direction that you don't need him to face. So when you talk to him, you almost have to like get up on a platform or jump on his head to get him to stop, and then try to angle him correctly. It was just a disaster. Like after getting game over screens, I had to play this one by getting the one up mushroom every single time, and just even knowing how to beat it and how to like, get them to throw Mario where I needed them to throw Mario. That last one is just, there's no way quality control tested that. But yeah, the Chuckster level kind of like broke me. I was like, okay, I'm good. I think I finished the game with like about 60, so about half of the shines in them. What's interesting too is I do remember in Nintendo, I look back and I kind of like when they were defiant on certain things. One of them was Shiggy. I'm having a brain fart, so I'll jump into my other thought. One of them was Reggie Fils-Aimé when they asked him about the Wii U, like, where's the console? And he's like, it's just the box. And that has just become so true today. I think he was like 8 years ahead of his time. He was like right on the precipice of that being basically how everything is now. It's like it's just a box. You can make it pretty, but I'm looking at my PS5, which actually looks kind of cool. But I'm looking at my desktop that I'm collecting I'm streaming on right now, and it's just a big rectangular box. That's all it is. And you see like what the Switch became, and you're like, yeah, it was just a box. But now like it's it's an idea. It's a concept. So I found that interesting, and Shiggy as well. And now I remember what I was going to say with that. They asked him how many shines were in the game, and I don't recall if he actually told them, but he was just like, why does that matter? Like, we're making a complete game, like, because Mario 64 had 120 stars or whatever, and it's like, well, how many shines, how many? That's what people like would focus on then, and people are kind of crappy to Nintendo sometimes when they're interviewing them. They're like, well, how many? Well, like, it's important. And he's like, nah, not really. Like, why does that matter how many there are? Like, because honestly, I think he was right, because like 40 of them suck. But yeah, there's just a lot of like odd elements. There's another one. This one didn't frustrate me as bad. It just had like a frustrating element in it. So it's like you gotta roll a giant watermelon fruit to a bar and they juice it, but everything is trying to kill you. And if like the watermelon hits anything, there's these enemies on the beach that sprint up to you if they see you. So if you get in their way, there's like 50 of them too. So if you walk in front of them, they just launch you into the air and break your watermelon. And the watermelon, of course, is also covered in Vaseline. It's 8 feet tall, and you're just like rolling and squirting this thing towards the bar. And it's just like, and of course, it's up on a mountain. You got to go, it's up on a hill, like behind the thing. You have to go get it. So it's interesting. It makes me happy that they re-released this game in particular. And it's also going to be on the Switch 2 for the GameCube, Switch Online backwards compatibility. And I think that's good to kind of like keep the legacy up and everything. I think the game deserves its reviews. It's super highly rated. I walked away enjoying it. but it's just so interesting because, like I said at the beginning of this, I love Mario games. Don't get me wrong, but I always preferred, RPGs or Zelda, where you're like collecting things, fighting bosses, solving puzzles. I've always gravitated towards, the more in-depth stories, the strategy of the gameplay, like, as opposed to the running and jumping, especially with 3D Marios. And I would say, Galaxy fixes just about friggin' everything that, Sunshine had. But it's one of those games where there's something there. There's a reason why, out of the three titles to pick, that I went straight to Sunshine. I started playing that first. And I think there's a lot of reasons why the GameCube era is looked back on so fondly. Is Nintendo took a lot of risks during that time, and they weren't selling a lot of consoles. So you have a twofold of Nintendo needing to release really good first party games that were probably too far ahead of their time. Like, even Mario having Flood and, Wind Waker in particular, having that unique cell shaded style, it stood the test of time. That, like, those types of ideas, like Mario Sunshine, still looked back upon very fondly, and I think it deserves it. It's, you have half the game which is so fun to play, the anesthetics fun, the gameplay, like everything's so good, and then you just have infuriating gameplay elements, and it's fascinating. So overall, going back onto this, so I felt exactly the same, and playing some of these older games, it kind of makes me happy that my feelings have been the same across a few of these titles that I played. Like, if I really liked it at the time, I liked it at the time. My frustration with Super Mario Sunshine, at the time when I played it, I had the same exact experience as now. I'm like, wow, I really like a lot of things about this, and my God, I'm going to pull my hair out. But what I wanted to do is kind of sit down and talk about Super Mario Sunshine a little bit. Honestly, I feel happy that other people are going to get to experience this, even if it's, on Nintendo Switch Online in kind of like the goofy way. But I like that people are going to get to experience this game, because I do feel like it kind of got forgotten a little bit. Like, that era, it's kind of a blip, and everybody looks back on it so fondly. GameCube, it has some of the most sought after collectibles as well, because once again, the prints of the games, everything was so low, by comparison to what it is now, and you didn't have a digital option. And playing the GameCube games now, it's difficult because the controller was so unique. You want component cables, and that had progressive scan technology in it. So it I'm happy that Nintendo updated that. The graphics are great. It's got the widescreen. Everything like looks good on the game. It's fun to play. It's one that's kind of funny to recommend, because I'm like, oh yeah, everyone should play it, right? But if you're going into it and you're like, oh yeah, I played Super Mario Galaxy and Odyssey, well, I like this one. It's like, you will, but you might also hate it and be very confused why everything was so weird in it. But honestly, I think that's why we come to love and appreciate Nintendo, is because of their weirdness and some of the odd decisions they make and somehow pull off. But that'll wrap up Super Mario Sunshine. It's a great game that you just hate at times, which is funny. But yeah, Super Mario Sunshine on the Nintendo GameCube. It was really fun going back and kind of playing that, 20 plus years later, and still having a lot of the same feelings that I had at the time that it launched. But this is Big Reed. Thank you for joining me with another episode of Gaming's Lost Memories. And hey, stay tuned and posted. We'll be covering another retrospective gameplay thing here. So yeah, I appreciate you listening, and like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Thank you.